Down this year to 1.7%, downgraded next year too. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it didn't happen by chance, it happened by choice. His choice. And it's the wrong choice to go too far and too fast. In his own words in the June budget, he chose to go £40 billion further and faster in tax rises and spending cuts than our plan to halve the deficit over 4 years. It's that pace of cuts that has seen consumer confidence fall in almost every month since the general election. In his first budget, the Chancellor promised steady and sustained economic recovery. And when last September's growth figures came out, the Chancellor took the credit. He called the figures a vote of confidence in the government's economic policy. But when the economy contracted in the fourth quarter, what did he do? He blamed the snow. Mr. Deputy Speaker, even he must appreciate the irony. Because while the Prime Minister was grounded from his trip to Thailand, he was on the piste in Klosters. I guess it was the right type of snow for a skiing holiday, just the wrong type of snow for our economy. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, what is it about the British snow? Because they had worse snow in Germany, a big freeze in France, in the US, the worst blizzards for decades. But despite all of that, their economies grew in the fourth quarter. And while our growth forecasts have worsened, theirs have improved. The German economy, the Chancellor should just calm down a little bit, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The German economy is forecast to grow more strongly than it was last year. So is the United States. Growth in the world economy has been revised up. But which is the major country downgrading its growth forecast? The United Kingdom. Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's not the wrong type of snow to blame, it's the wrong type of Chancellor. The wrong type of Chancellor in the wrong type of government with the wrong priorities for Britain. Mr. Deputy Speaker, he also...
Look, courtesy should be shown, but can I say to everyone, the public out there also want to hear what the opposition's got to say. If there are government members who do not want to listen, then please leave the chamber. But the public out there want to hear both sides of the sound. Some people may agree, some may disagree. Leader of the opposition.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, they shout and jeer as unemployment hits a 17-year high. What more do you need to know about the party opposite? He also promised in his June budget that he would deliver low inflation. And what's happened? Inflation has risen month after month after month. And it didn't simply happen by accident. It is happening because he took the wrong decision on VAT. Same old taxes, same old Tories. And he promised us falling unemployment too. And what has happened since he gave his first budget? Over 60,000 more people looking for work. To this Tory government, just like the ones of the past, unemployment is still a price worth paying. And when people heard the Chancellor's budget speech today, they will wonder what world he was describing. I think the Chancellor should listen to this. Because in the constituencies of over 130 members of this House, 10 people are chasing every vacancy. 1 in 5 young people is looking for work. Families are seeing their living standards squeezed, not just this year, but year after year. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, what does the government say to communities losing their jobs? Let me tell you what they recently told the people of Newport, justifying the closure of their passport office. They said the redundancy payments of the staff being sacked would provide a boost in trade for the local economy. Mr. Deputy Speaker, what kind of planet people live on? On growth, on inflation, on unemployment, on the promises he made, the Chancellor couldn't bring himself to admit that his second budget tells the story of the failure of his first. At this stage of the recovery, growth should be powering ahead. Unemployment should be falling fast. And every month, when unemployment is higher than it should be, stores up long-term damage for our country. Every month, when growth is lower than it should be, It hits the future potential of our economy. The problem is, instead of admitting it, he refuses to change course. What did the Energy Secretary say? If the figures change, the government should not be lashed to the mast of their reckless gamble. It should be willing to change and think again. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's not as if they haven't had practice at the U-turn business. They're becoming the past masters on forests, school sport, housing benefit for those looking for work. Even on the vanity photographer, they've been forced to climb down. But on this, the issue that matters the most, they are least willing to change. Now at the weekend, we learned something new about the Chancellor. Apparently, his political aspiration is to be a blend of Nigel Lawson and Michael Heseltine. Mr. Deputy Speaker, another comparison springs to mind. The same hubris and arrogance of the early 1990s. The same broken promises. The same view that unemployment is a price worth paying. He's Norman Lamont with an iPod, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And no doubt on his playlist, Je ne regrette rien. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is not a growth budget. It's not a jobs budget. It's a budget for more of the same. From a complacent, arrogant Chancellor in a complacent, arrogant government. It's hurting, but it isn't working. And let's not forget, Mr. Deputy Speaker, these are not just the Chancellor's decisions. They are not just the Prime Minister's decisions. They're the Deputy Prime Minister's decisions too. He is an accomplice to the Tory plan. When it comes to the economy, the man who coined the phrase alarm clock Britain has the snooze button well and truly on. Nobody voted for this deficit plan. Least of all, nobody voted for this plan. Least of all, his Liberal Democrat voters who were told in promise after promise he would never countenance it. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if I can put it this way, Jim, it's no wonder nobody wants to share a platform with him. On the measures in this budget, I welcome the support for the armed forces. And on the measures he proposes to support growth, we will look at them. But there is little if they listen, there is little reason they will make the difference to growth we need. Indeed, the Justice Secretary fell asleep during the Chancellor's speech. His growth strategy was so compelling. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's important. The Office for Budget Responsibility has already factored in every measure he's just announced, and they still produce today's downgraded growth forecast. And you can't blame people for being sceptical when the Chancellor says he has a new flagship policy for growth. Because people are asking, what happened to his last flagship policy for growth at the centre of his June budget? Does anyone remember the National Insurance holiday? He was strangely silent about it today. In June, he took the credit at that dispatch box for helping 400,000 small firms. How many have actually benefited? Mr. Deputy Speaker, he's been strangely shy in revealing the figures. But someone let slip to the Financial Times. By mid-January, it wasn't 400,000, it wasn't 40,000, it wasn't even 4,000. It was less than 0.5% of the number he promised, just 1,500 businesses. Now, on his incentives for small firms, we will look at the detail. But I have to say, his decision to cancel flexible working for families with children between 16 and 18 is extraordinary. This Prime Minister took credit for championing that policy with Mumsnet, and then a few months later, he takes the credit with small business for dumping it. You've got to ask, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has he got no shame? The idea... No!